All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for Sheena and for Matt, Kyle, and Sean for joining us. This is I guess the second installation of this series that we're kicking off on tenX Talks, which is geared towards kind of the innovation economy within Central Florida on relevant topics, um, kind of relevant trends, as well as educational topics. That's going to help inform and help grow companies in the community. The topic today is on what's happening in the metaverse. Obviously this is a relevant topic heading into next week. So just a quick plug on that. Next week is Meta Center Global Week. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in downtown Orlando. It's a bunch of speakers, a bunch of events. There's the mayor's jam that's happening downtown. There's a scavenger hunt that's happening downtown. Those are open to the public, not just people attending Meta Center Global Week. And then there's a huge concert downtown on Thursday night, Lost Frequencies. So yeah, that's kind of at the forefront of everyone's mind. But if you've been living under a rock, just a quick plug to look into Meta Center Global Week for next week. So additionally on that, this is through Orlando Tech Community and Innovate Orlando. If you're interested in joining or getting more involved with either of those, please reach out to myself or to David Adelson, who I think is on the call as well. So for today, I actually made, believe it or not, slides. It took me like 3 seconds, but I just figured it would help kind of guide the conversation for today. Figured the best thing to do to kind of start out would be just to kind of go around the horn with introductions for everyone on the panel. Just kind of 60 seconds on yourself, on what your company does, and then we'll go from there. So Kyle, do you want to start off?
Sure. Hey everybody, I'm Kyle Moran from 302 Interactive. Been in Orlando for about, I guess, like 13 years now. Went to UCF, started 302 as what was meant to just be a small game studio, but then over the last 5 or so years turned into this digital agency where we're building interactive media across healthcare, education. We worked in attractions for Universal. And really, for us, the focus is bringing game design and game technology out into the real world. How can we apply this technology into real life situations and create a more playful experience? Um, so that's me.
Awesome. Sheena?
Hi, everyone. Sheena Fowler. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Engagements and Business Development and the Orlando site lead at Red 6. We're creating an augmented reality platform for fighter pilots. It is a revolutionary technology that takes us up into the skies, transforming the way that pilots are able to train and operate while they're doing their work. I've got a long background now with Orlando, almost 15 plus years, Full Sail grad, and really excited to participate today. Thank you so much.
Sean?
Hello, Sean Pinnock, CEO at Avalon. Been making games since a little kid. Actually started out modding games in Warcraft, Starcraft. Kept making games throughout college. Actually paid my way through school that way in part, making independent games. Kept making them for a while. Was pretty successful at it. Worked in AAA at Electronic Arts and Microsoft. Started my last business, Cyberdream. Bootstrapped it over the course of 6 years to about 40 employees. Built technologies for companies like Universal, NASA, a bunch of others, mostly in the VR and entertainment space. Also built some best-selling virtual reality games. The whole time that I've been dreaming of this quote unquote metaverse, and then I saw the world converging on this idea. So I began Avalon. It's a venture backed startup. We raised $13 million about 2 years ago, and we're building away, having a great time.
Awesome. And Matt?
Yes, I'm Matthew Hogan, founder and CEO of M3D VR. Been in Central Florida since the late 80s. And then after graduating high school, joined the U.S. Navy. And then after serving and becoming a service disabled veteran, moved back to Central Florida and have been in production for over the last 20 years, audio production, the 3D production, additive manufacturing. But it wasn't until 2017 that we started diving into VR development. My previous background, again, in 3D modeling, was a I was a former student from the Dave School, which been there for about over a year and a half. It was a very intense program, but that led me into, again, the virtual production side of things for virtual reality. And then over the last year and a half, my company has been integrating multiple pieces of XR hardware to create immersive experiences for the military, medical industry, and entertainment.
Awesome. So I've, I thought that it would probably be best to start here on what is the metaverse. There's, I mean, a lot of differing definitions. I mean, but maybe even just to start, like, how would you explain the metaverse to someone, to a 5-year-old or to your grandmother? So maybe we can just start there, kind of open-ended question for anyone who wants to take it.
So this is actually something I wrote a blog about. You can just Google it. It's called "What It Really Is the Metaverse and Why Should You Care," written by Sean Pinnock. And I have a pretty simple answer to this. Imagine a three-dimensional version of the internet. Instead of websites, organizations, and individuals host virtual worlds. Instead of a cursor, when users navigate to these worlds in the metaverse, they bring their avatar with them, along with all the digital goods and digital rights they possess. These worlds can take any size, shape, or form that a creator desires. Some will look like multiplayer video games, but others will take unexpected themes such as classrooms, training experiences, and the list goes on.
Anyone want to add to that? I guess the point I'd hammer down on that is explain it to my grandmother. That I think that might work for all of us on here, right? Tech kind of fluent people, but if it's again like a grandmother, a 5-year-old, is there any other kind of there any more way to make it even more basic?
The grandma definition I like comes from a book called The Spatial Web. This guy Gabriel Rene, he talks about metaverse technology stacks, but he just says it's the internet for people, spaces, and things. And that's like the simplest way to think of it. So you think of like IoT devices, physical digital spaces, and how you bring people together. He calls it the spatial web. It's just the internet for people, spaces, and things.
Okay. Sheena,
for our use case, it's a little bit different because it doesn't have to be the same metaverse that's publicly interactive, right? And so when you look at the defense definitions of the way metaverse has been utilized over the last many decades, it's a synthetic environment in which multiple people can participate. For military use case, we can make it secure, right? So it can be, to Sean's point, almost like a classroom, right? So it's this digital space in which we're able to interact. For our use case, it's an augmented reality metaverse where people are interacting in the sky. So it can vary between some of these different definitions.
okay. And Matt, is there anything you wanted to add on this?
Well, the last aspect of this is the e-commerce, the way that people are going to be able to shop now and understand what the product is being presented through the metaverse. You now can have a 3D representation of it, even with haptics. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can get the size and scale. So just to add on to everything else that the rest of the panelists has said, from training to immersive entertainment, there's a whole e-commerce that's going to be associated with the metaverse as well.
Okay. And I guess just before we kind of move on to some other topics, just a basic kind of definition, just trying to set standards. I mean, there's a lot of, AR, VR, XR, mixed reality, etc. Can someone just kind of take a stab at defining what those mean?
I can.
Okay,
Yeah, so those a bunch of different fun acronyms. XR, I like to just kind of share for everybody, is like the variable reality. It's like it's just meant to be the blanket term when we talk about this technology we're using. XR is just like our blanket overall term. And then VR, AR, and MR, they're actually 3 significantly different technologies. Virtual reality is a fully immersed experience. You're in virtual environment and you have little to no consideration of the real world. Augmented reality is pretty similar to mixed reality. Augmented reality is an overlay of information on top of the real world. So you still are able to see and interact with the real world yourself, but you're just seeing an overlay of digital content on top of that. The difference with augmented and mixed reality is mixed reality, that digital content is interacting with the real world, where augmented reality doesn't require it to. So if you think of like a heads-up display of digital information, that's augmented reality. You're just seeing like digital information on your smart glasses as you walk around in the real world. That's augmented reality. Whereas mixed reality is taking your 3D avatar and placing it in the middle of Lake Eola and having it swim around. Like now you're mixing realities together. That's where that term comes from. So, and then XR is just our umbrella blanket term. I don't believe in extended reality from Microsoft. I don't subscribe to that. It just makes things complicated.
Got it. Okay. So I think what I wanted to talk through next is obviously there's like the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is a lot of negative headlines on the metaverse hype. On this was a headline from an article, RIP Metaverse 2021 to 2023, very short-lived. I mean, in reality, if you dig into these articles, there's Meta losing, I think $21 billion on some of their metaverse initiatives. There's layoffs happening. There's drops in Google searches. There's drops in kind of virtual real estate. So I think this is kind of a thought that's on a lot of people's minds are we just in kind of the classic hype cycle where this was really, just pushed front and center for a while, now it dies down, and then it comes back to being actually commercially really attractive and viable over the long term? Or is there something else that's going on and that happened over the last year or two? So just take it around, kind of open-ended question. Ideally would like to kind of hear from everyone on it.
Well, we're kind of in this wild west of the fourth industrial revolution, right? We're seeing things that pop up and die off fairly quickly, crypto being one of them, NFTs being another, metaverse. But I mean, it's kind of what we saw in the beginning of the internet when it first came out. It was just where's the direction going to be headed? And still to this day, I mean, we're still seeing the internet kind of morph and expand. So I think over time, the terms might change, but the actual underlying idea of what the metaverse is probably going to remain the same. But I mean, again, you're seeing a technology boom like no other. I mean, on a daily basis, like I'm seeing a new piece of hardware, whether it's gloves, headsets, new chips, new boards, new towers, like so it's like to my point, it's just this wild west right now. So trying to kind of put it neatly in a box, I think, is almost impossible right now.
Yeah, to jump on top of that too, it's not just the companies that you mentioned here. The entire tech industry has had a massive surge of layoffs, and I'd say that it's in part due to the Gartner hype cycle around the metaverse. But I'd also point at the unprecedented growth that we had in the tech industry as a whole during the COVID era, and all these companies just overhired. So I'm not surprised to see that right now, and I don't think that this is the death of the metaverse. I think this is just the beginning of where this technology is going.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. With any technology, there's these ebbs and flows, and adoption is the main focus of what we have to do. And it's difficult to thrust such a mass technology on such different generations of folks that are interacting with technology in different ways and help them understand how it can improve their daily life. And that's just going to be a work in progress. That is across the board, not only just these mixed reality technologies, but autonomous vehicles, AI, all of these different realms. We're trying to figure out the adoption route, right, to where we get to this mass adoption to where everyone can start to use it and the tools get refined and become better for our daily lives.
Anything to add on that, Kyle?
Yeah, I think I like seeing this picture around the internet. the metaverse, especially the one that like Sean is trying to build, that term is from a book from like 1992. So it's like it's it's a theory like North Star that everybody's trying to approach as we keep it evolving the internet. And I don't think that passion is going to go away. That passion's like what's really driven our industry here in Orlando on the simulation side. It's what's been driving Sean as far as I've known him. So I don't think that's going to go away and just die out. I think it's just going to keep evolving the internet over time.
Yeah, I guess kind of a follow-up on this is, I had been thinking of, as I was thinking through this question, I don't know if almost like this industry's been penalized from the zero interest rate policy environment and the free money because it was like kind of the perfect timing for Sean, as you mentioned, a lot of these layoffs to happen. It's just there was maybe a little more track record with enterprise software companies to where it didn't seem completely overblown and overhyped, and there was a bigger kind of commercialized base. So almost think that just the timing of when this kind of became front and center of everyone's attention, combined with the kind of free money post COVID, was a perfect storm for this hype cycle to really occur. And maybe maybe it's just a matter of time for it to kind of rationalize and pick back up. But on that note, are there any specific things that you think are preventing this industry from taking off from an adoption commercialization standpoint? Is, for example, like compute speeds, cost of hardware, things like that just aren't there yet, and that's what we're waiting on? Or is it just a matter of we're there, it just needs more time?
It's a number of things, and it depends on like how you think of the metaverse and what part of it you want to see. But ultimately, the way I envision it, building the metaverse is like putting a person not just on the moon, but putting a person not just on the moon, but putting a person on Mars. And so there's a number of technologies that need to come together in order to create this technology singularity for us to have our ultimate quote unquote Neil Stevenson metaverse, but we're seeing parts of it exist right now. So certainly, GPU speeds being better internet connection, 5G, all of these things are going to help push us in that direction. But there's a number of other technologies adjacent as well that will speed this up, like AI.
Absolutely. I just kind of want to touch on what all of the Central Florida companies are building today are not for our generation. It's for the next generation that's going to be coming along. Like we're just kind of these pioneers right now, like finding our way and navigating our waters through this virtual world. But realistically, it's going to be, the 13, 14-year-olds when they become, in their mid 20s that are really going to hone this technology and this web 3.0 and this fourth industrial revolution. So essentially we're all just kind of pioneers navigating these waters and seeing what's going to happen.
And in the meantime, private industry will find pockets in which these tools are useful, right? And defense is a great example of that. We've been using these tools for decades, and they're not new. It's pushing them out into the larger society that is limiting. But when you look at a company like Red 6, we had a problem to solve, and augmented reality happened to be the solution that would get us to that where we needed to go. And I think sometimes when you look at these industries, we got so wrapped around the hardware and the software of creating these techs that we didn't know where to use them. We didn't know how to employ them. Why would I put augmented reality glasses on and walk around all day? Is there a purpose yet? And we're still sorting through that, right? And in the meantime, private industry and elements like defense have a purpose for it, where we can advance the technology. We can push it farther and faster than anywhere else where there is an actual need, and it is going to make a difference.
Okay, so maybe not getting off the negatives. When most people, I just say most people, common folk like me hear the term metaverse, they think of groups like Facebook, Meta, they think of people wearing virtual reality goggles and walking around and, playing some game online. What do you think of when you hear the term metaverse? What companies, I guess, in this just overarching sphere of innovation do you kind of look at as innovators that are kind of moving the needle forward in this space?
I would say Fortnite and Roblox. Those are probably the two biggest um, metaverse virtual worlds that have had really strong success. They've kind of naturally pivoted into that space, which is good. You've got spaces, I can't even remember them now. This is the 3D space. I can't even remember it because it didn't succeed. But Fortnite and Roblox,
Decentraland?
Thank you, Decentraland. Decentraland, I think during the hype of metaverse, when everybody was really, really excited about this concept and Meta came out and all these things, Decentraland had 1,000 daily active users, and for some reason nobody just cared to look at that because it was just so much hype. But Fortnite and Roblox, they've got millions of players and across not just kids as it started off, but across all demographics now. They're covering different use cases. There was one of my favorites is there's a Holocaust museum that an individual creator made in Fortnite that is uh, accurate to the depiction of the history and has had like thousands upon thousands of people go in there for field trips and independent study and all of these things like that concept of 3D virtual space with avatars running around and learning and growing. That's they're doing it. They're providing that value in that space. There's limitations there, but I think that as far as leading the way, they're definitely taking that on.
Yeah, Sean?
So BMW just, you guys might have seen this. BMW just announced I think an experience inside of Fortnite. We saw, I think, one of the largest virtual concerts ever. I think maybe it was Ariana Grande's concert in Fortnite, right? It had something like 50 million people visit it and hundreds of millions of views afterwards. So there's some great examples of success, but I'm gonna give Grandma another shot here and see if I could explain the metaverse to her. And I'd say, okay, Grandma, this is the metaverse. Look around, walk outside, look around, and imagine you can just go anywhere you want really quickly and you're in a virtual space. Like this is it. Like this is the metaverse. You're in it right now, whether or not you're aware of it. Now, initially, it might be more low fidelity. Like what you're seeing right now is maybe where the metaverse will ultimately end up in terms of the fidelity of what you're looking around and seeing right now. But that's going to be the experience. We're going to be able to recreate your physical reality as you know it. And I probably wouldn't use that language virtually, digitally, and then connect those things together.
Any other companies that we want to touch on as far as people that are doing really cool things that the public might not know about in this space?
There's a company called Humane that did a TED talk earlier this year, and I was really humbled by it. Basically, the CEO, he's former Apple designer, worked with Steve Jobs, and raised in silence $100 million to build this AI device that lives like on your chest, like a little lapel pin, I suppose. It's got a camera and it talks with you. And his goal is his North Star is to continue taking the compute from mainframe to desktop to laptop to phone and make it even smaller and more ubiquitous to your daily life. And so while we think of the metaverse as like virtual space, go into their VR and these virtual environments, on the complete opposite side, when you think about mixed and augmented reality, we've still been talking about like putting, how he says it, putting screens on your face, and that's just not so practical. It's doing the job for us today, but it's just not a practical long-term solution. And I think we like know that intrinsically, but we resist it because it's all we have for now in our our AR industry. But Humane really kind of came out this year and humbled me, right? Like I've been doing this for like 10 years and I was like, I didn't think of that. That's cool. So it's a really good TED talk on where he sees that future going. And I think they're planning to launch by the end of the year, if not at CES. So they're coming out in full force, and it's definitely a unique experience versus like Meta's smart glasses or anybody else that's tried to do this in the past.
So there's a lot of companies building things, technologies for the metaverse beyond what we traditionally think. Like traditionally, we think Roblox, we think Fortnite, we think of these 3D environments, but there's a lot of like auxiliary technologies being built. Like for example, in-world AI is a technology. It's conversational AI, so that I can walk up, have a conversation with an NPC. We actually integrate it in Avalon, and these NPCs, these non-person characters, they feel like humans. Like and with natural language processing, another technology that's being built, they're talking to you as if they're humans. And I'm telling you, you wouldn't know if they weren't humans. And this is just one of a myriad number of technologies. We have NVIDIA building cloud compute so we can render down extremely high fidelity environments to literally any device. We have a number of other technologies, AI for world generation and spatial generation, so we can start building virtual worlds with a text prompt. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But the point is, all of these technologies are singularity. There's a singularity occurring that's going to enable and empower metaverse. It's going to be our mission to Mars.
I'm super excited about the potential impacts of augmented reality and entertainment. I think there's both the public facing opportunity to bring themed entertainment into our daily lives, be able to have it in our homes, in addition to dedicated spaces. And to Sean's point, the ability to have conversations with characters and people from our past and historians, the ability to bring entertainment into history and education and transform the way that people interact with information is really extraordinary, because that's the point of all of this technology, is to experience and absorb things in new ways that we can carry it on to transform society into new ways. So it's exciting to see what we can do with entertainment. You can do it faster, cheaper, more effective, and more personalized, really. And it's going to be fun to see where it goes.
Yeah, just while we're on this point, I guess I'll jump ahead a second. I don't know if you guys saw this. This was Lex Friedman's interview with Mark Zuckerberg. They kind of demonstrated some new technology, and I follow Lex Friedman fairly closely and trust basically anything he says till I would die. And he was saying that it was, one of the most kind of surreal experiences he's ever had in technology, of just how like genuinely authentic the experience was, where he's on thousands of miles away from Mark Zuckerberg and can interview him, and that's actually how real the characters kind of looked in the virtual environment when they're scanned and actually using the technology appropriately that's being developed. So if you haven't seen that, that's Lex Friedman interviewing Mark Zuckerberg through the Lex Friedman podcast. I thought it was unbelievable. So
Yeah, to that point, digital twin avatars, huge topic of conversation. So in my previous company, when we were an additive manufacturing company, we also had a full-on 96 camera photogrammetry rig. So we were doing data capture back in 2016 of full bodies, and then 3D printing people out as their own art figures. And since then, the technology has quite, as you can see, advanced dramatically. And now with AI, I mean, you're going to get to a point that, like Sean said, you're going to be talking to an avatar that you're just not going to know is not human. Like that's kind of where this world's going, right? And it's like, all right, well, all right, we can create these things, but where do you position these things, right? Like what market, what industries are really going to kind of take hold of this? So, we've identified quite a few on our end, whether it's military training, whether it's the entertainment aspect. I mean, people are even going to be utilizing digital twin avatars for customer service. So the term just keeps coming back. It's this wild west, right? Like we just kind of, I've never seen a growth in technology like we're seeing right now ever before. So.
Well, and to touch on the point of companies, we've participated in the Disney Tech Accelerator last year, and there were some really exciting companies that participated. Mojo Vision is one of the ones that, they still have a long path to get to where they're going to be, but it's augmented reality in a contact lens. And Kyle was talking about that earlier. What is the purpose of when we're going to put something on our face, and how are we going to use that and really adopt that as everyday technology? But if we can get to a place where it's that undetectable, imagine the AI, AR, mixed reality experiences that we'll be able to have once we get that adoption of the hardware to be something that we're going to be able to adopt every day.
So in Avalon, speaking of character avatars, we've built some pretty interesting technology. So what we're seeing here, right, is photogrammetry from the headset cameras, which is really quite interesting. But what we've been able to do is make it so that anyone with any webcam, like this webcam right in front of me, can track my face. And I can start representing my face. We're using some AI technology to help empower this as an avatar. Now, these avatars aren't as photoreal as what you're seeing here, but they're really believable and they're slightly stylized characters, but I can be fully emotive, etc. And we've taken this a step further too. So we've partnered with another company called Didimo. And with Didimo, we're able to use AI to generate every ethnicity in the world, and not just every, so you could represent yourself as any ethnicity, any sex, any race. And then furthermore, you can transform yourself into ogres, half elves, humans, etc., all using the same character mesh. This is a little technical, but what this means is we can put thousands of people concurrently in the same world that look like just about anything they want, and they can all talk to each other, be expressive, etc. And these are technologies because of things like Unreal 5's nanite skeletal meshes and Didimo being able to generate these meshes from text prompts. We're able to get to this, and I'll share some of this in the chat so you guys can see it.
Yeah, I think that, some of this might just sound like it's technology looking for a problem, but in reality, like there's going to be a lot of real world authentic use cases that come from this that actually drive real shareholder value. Like as I'm thinking of this, as I was thinking of the Lex Friedman interview and how real this looks, is you can think of like telehealth becoming infinitely more impactful when you're actually engaging with a doctor in this kind of an environment. And that's going to drive more medication adherence. That's going to drive better patient engagement. That's going to prevent churn. That's going to help that engagement infinitely more than what we're doing right now, which is just kind of a one-dimensional screen. And then if you think about that with tutors, with people in high school or college that are engaging with professors that they wouldn't have access to otherwise, and being able to engage with them one-on-one or in a small group setting with something like this, or learning music or engaging, with people in that kind of environment, just the impact that something like this would have as opposed to just, a typical Zoom call, which is what's done right now. I think that's kind of where I get excited on the business impact on something like that.
I'd like to, follow this up because I've had a interesting experience with augmented reality, and so much of this technology is sort of like moonshot level, like dreaming of a day where you get high fidelity, delivered in wherever you are, no matter where you are, no matter what network strength. And the reality is we're just at a place where QR codes are adopted. So we're just now coming out of the pandemic at a place where QR codes are naturalized. Most of my phone, all of the phone apps currently that are camera based do not natively support AR, right? So I'm having this problem just with A-Frame being cross compatible across Apple and Android, right? And so the limitations of the real friction here about getting naturalized human experiences with spatial data, meaning I can open up my phone and bang, hit a card, and all of a sudden a world pops up around me, a spatial data set, of whatever sort. That still hasn't matured to the place of public consumption. So the idea of head-worn accessories now somehow jumping over the bar of soap experience, I think it's great, but I don't see it practically in sort of the innovation S-curve, right? We're sort of on this incremental, everyone's chasing lighter and lighter technology up here, jumping the S-curve. In the meantime, we're slowly marching up sort of a limitations and bottleneck, a threshold of quality, and it always seems to relate to this, and hence the reason it seems like Mark Zuckerberg went so hard on this next demo of the avatar to really show what best in class, technology stack can do. The basic human experience here, though, is you open up your phone, you point your camera at something, and are you able to naturally, without a lot of steps, meaning I don't have to download an app, it's just like a QR code, it recognizes, bang, and AR appears. I think those small steps go a long way to socialize the techniques to make all this stuff more possible, more plausible.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the moonshot feeling, because I use that a lot for just my own grounding as well. I think understanding the term moonshot and where that comes from is really important. And I'm not an investor, but this would be my investment advice for anybody. there's two ways to kind of look at that metaverse moonshot. There's folks like Sean who are actually trying to get to the moon. Fortnite, Roblox, Meta, etc. They're trying to get to the moon, and nobody's really gotten there yet and actualized Neil Stephenson's metaverse yet. People have gotten into orbit and prepping massive rockets to try to get there, but it's going to take an immense amount of technology, an immense amount of effort to get to that moon and actually like land there and say we did it, or to Mars, to Sean's point. And that's one half, right? That's one focus. And then in practical, like what happened with NASA and going to the moon, there's everything else that comes out of it. There's every single innovation that comes out of trying to get there. There's all of the microwave technology, all the food safety, all the digital flight systems, like everything that we learned about how to get to the moon. If you look at that technology and figure out how to adopt it into everyday life or into your business or into your practical use cases, this is what Red 6 is doing. This is what Ken Hall was just mentioning about all these different smaller use cases. As like these folks try to get to the moon, let them get to the moon. And I struggled with this a lot when I was first getting started, because I was like, oh, like they're trying to get to the moon. I'll just start building bottle rockets in my backyard and I'll try too. It's really tough. It's just not so practical until I think these bigger folks, they get there. But there's so many innovations and technologies and problems that are coming out of them trying to get there, that every time, you know, they make this, like this picture here that you've got of Lex Friedman, every time they make a step like this, it's not so much that this is going to become ubiquitous tomorrow. It's like, now how do I flip this around and use this to solve a real problem today, while they keep going and trying to get to the moon? That's been my way of looking at it the past few years.
Right. One of my consultants, a guy named Charlie Fink, had said, you know, Steve, don't bother trying to define AR and VR. Let the big boys, the Apples, the Googles, do that work. They're going to be the ones with the most amount of skin in the game, the most amount of capital to really move the conversation, define the acronyms. Around in the margins is where you can find very cool stuff that might not be something that they focus on. But I don't think that it precludes us from working with bottle rockets. And I think, in fact, working with bottle rockets sometimes is a way to move nimbly in between the legs of giants.
I agree.
Yeah. As an example, to follow up on what Kyle said, and then to play off what you said too, Stephen. When I was running Cyber Dream, we were thinking about building technologies for this eventual metaverse, this rocket, this moonshot. And one of the technologies we ended up building was live event visualization. So because we wanted people to go to live events and we need all these lights, etc. And we ended up selling that technology to someone that now uses that technology to visualize events for the NFL, for Lady Gaga's concerts. And so that was an example of a technology we built while trying to go somewhere else that ended up being really useful for this other thing. But I think the big thing you were hitting on, Stephen, is what I would call friction. Like right now, in order to, let's say, an experience what could eventually be a metaverse, it's too difficult, right? You got to put on a headset, you got to have a really expensive computer, but there are people solving this problem in ways that maybe not everyone's aware of. And I would say the thing that I'd really point at, and I know some of these big companies we've been talking about are thinking about these things, and that's cloud rendering. And what I mean is they'll have computers with really powerful GPUs, and they'll stream down whatever it is they want to play down to any device you can think of. So you could, for example, use an Oculus One, or pick your oldest headset or your older phone and stream down the best looking game you've ever seen in your life. So Cyberpunk 2077 on 4K. That's where it's going, and we're not super far away. I'd say in 5 years that tech's going to be real.
Yeah, I've seen examples like a group called Nira that do, high polygon count, and that on an iPad, right? I mean, just unbelievable resolution. You could zoom into, multiple million pixel, data sets, almost like PTEX. And then on the other side of this is the voxel, this idea of the voxel rendering technology, and where that all leads us is, interesting.
So as an example, in Avalon, and we're gonna make the Meta Center event next week. We're gonna show you guys this. We have Avalon running on a mobile device with trillions of polygons, and thousands of characters running around on the screen, and we can cloud render it to any device. That's where it's going.
So I want to try to wrap up here before opening it up for Q&A, talking through some stuff in Orlando. I guess just before we jump here, tying back to some of the concepts, there's some of the things we talked about before, where I guess like maybe that's the concern with with adoption of this technology moving forward is we're out of a zero interest rate policy environment. Interest rates are up. Companies are not investing as rapidly. Sean, you said it might take 5 years. Maybe, maybe 2 years ago it would have taken 2 years, right? If Meta wasn't being pressured and Google wasn't being pressured to, focus on EPS and profits, and they were focused on growth and investments in technology, maybe some of these enabling technologies would be brought to market a little bit quicker. And now it's just a game of being patient and allowing those investments to mature, allowing those enabling technologies to be available for the moonshots to occur. Is that kind of a fair summarization of, I guess, if there are concerns in this space on moving forward, is that a fair one?
I guess I can reply to this. I would say firstly, the most popular social platform in the United States is per demographic, it's actually Roblox. Roblox is more popular than TikTok for teenagers, more popular than Facebook for adults. So the metaverse is already here. Like kids are playing every single day, and they're way more engaged, way more captivated than we are scrolling on social media. They're aging out of this platform and they're looking for something new. But I would say that, to answer your question directly, Ken, yeah, there's some technology that needs to be built. In order for us to get to that next level. In 5 years, maybe that's right. I don't know. Maybe it's a little sooner. We'll see.
So
Listen, Ken, on the question of investment, right, and this idea that the inflationary environment, I'm still seeing groups that have technology that moves the needle, things that add value to business, kill it as far as raising money. So, I wouldn't take that as that may be a prescription for the market, but case by case, if you have something that is really powerful, then I still think you're going to be able to raise.
okay, well, let's jump to Orlando. All four of you have businesses that are deeply rooted in Central Florida. Maybe just start with the kind of simple question of, why does it make sense for your companies to be based in Central Florida?
Well, for us, it just makes sense being here because what's in our own backyard. I mean, the system that we've been developing over the last year and a half, omnidirectional treadmill, full haptic suit, haptic gloves, custom controllers, LED volumes, can be applied to military, medical, and the entertainment industry, and all of that's here in an 80-mile square radius of us. Orlando, honestly, if you would have told me that Orlando would be the capital of what it is today for so many things, if you would have said that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. But just in the last 3 years, the growth here in Central Florida and the companies that are moving here, it's a perfectly strategic place to have my company and a lot of other tech companies. So Orlando has, as I use this as analogy, a very rich oil field. We're just kind of tapping into that ourselves, and for us, this is a perfect place to grow into.
Yeah, I think for myself and our company, a lot of folks, I think, around the country and world, when this term metaverse popped up for everybody in 2021, they were very surprised. They were very shocked that the technology was where it was at, and there was all these new concepts, and there was a lot of shock and awe. And I think here in our community and our friends, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we've seen that, and since the 90s. And so, to Matt's point, there's just few decades of institutional knowledge here that gives us an advantage and almost a comfort with this technology, that I think if we're able to really get together strongly, we can capitalize on it faster because we have so much understanding of this historically. But then I think additionally, moving forward, rather than some other markets, we are also very focused on two things. We're focused on lifestyle and how to apply technology into a regular lifestyle, but then we're also really focused on entertainment and how to apply that to the best immersive entertainment experience in the world, which is Disney, right? And so you take those two areas, and that's what the metaverse is trying to do, is combine those two. Okay, now we're in the playground of being able to actually make that happen. And our community just lives that day to day, whereas most people, they have to read books or come travel here to learn about it.
So there's an interesting statistic about Orlando that a lot of people don't know, and that's that Orlando is the #1 exporter of game development talent. And worded another way, we're the #1 exporter of metaverse talent. And really, I was able to build my business because of this fact, my previous business. And then additionally, having the space industry here, the simulation and training hub, the #1 spot for tourism, and then also a huge gaming network. You put all those things together, and this melting pot occurs. And that melting pot sounds a lot like the quote unquote metaverse. So that's why we're here.
Well, and to that point, I think it's when you look at the convergence of industries, you're able to look at an ecosystem that has a talent pipeline, but also a community that is willing to collaborate, a culture of creativity. And when you start to mix all of these different industries and the talent drum is still beating underneath it, you're able to solve problems that in other places, life is too difficult, it's too complicated. Here, we find ways to collaborate, we find ways to meet, we find ways to reach across different industries to solve problems. And that I think is a fundamental resource for the Orlando ecosystem that's driving this industry. It's not only just that we have these great industries, but they've invested in this technology for decades, right? And Sean and Kyle and Matthew are all great examples of companies that were able to pull and leverage and build their businesses from multiple industries and focus that capital gain onto something that they wanted to focus on as their North Star. And that's a pretty extraordinary opportunity when you can afford to live in a community and build your business and scale it, and you have the talent and the resources to grow it and get to that next level of what you want to develop as a company. That's what an ecosystem is about. That's what a city development is about. And when you look at what we're able to do here, it's about that collaboration across industries, creating experiences that are going to change the world.
To Sheena's point, that has been one of the fundamental reasons for our growth is the collaboration here and our partnerships. And we just found ways to work together and support one another because look, I mean, we could all start up our own internal divisions of what everybody else does, but I mean, the manpower, the expertise behind that it would take to ramp up those divisions. So the collaboration has been, huge for us. Like just in the last 3 years, our growth has been exponential because of those partnerships and collaboration opportunities. So I just wanted to touch on what Sheena said there.
Yeah, and I'll maybe just wrap up with this and then let anybody who's on kind of ask away with anything. But the Orlando's positioning as a leader in the metaverse is for those who kind of think it's BS. There's actually 20 minutes ago, we had an Orlando company, Falcons Beyond, ring the opening bell at the NASDAQ today. They just
That's
went
right.
so huge success story for us, and very coincidental that it happened the day that we're having this conversation. So huge win for the community. And yeah, we'll open it up there. Feel free to come off mute, ask away with any questions or comments, and just clarify if it's for someone specifically or for anyone on the panel.
Ken, you did such a great job asking all the questions. It's just everyone's amazed. They're just amazed.
I do see Scott put one in the chat, which is, how do we integrate the metaverse concept into the lives of an everyday person? And what can the Orlando community do to be a good proving ground for that more practical adoption?
Oh man, there's so much. There's so much to do. I think it starts with the businesses here in Orlando. And they've been, at least for us, really supportive of learning how to adopt new technologies and how to, I hate the term digital transformation, but to learn how to bring in new technology into the lives of an everyday person. There's a really good book from, it's called The Third Wave, from the founder of AOL, and he talks about this wave of technology that we're currently going into, rather than being focused on like consumer experiences and entertainment and apps and all of these things, we're now looking at how can we actually solve problems in healthcare, education, government spaces, public spaces, at the city level, right, with like our city's digital twin and all of these spaces. If anybody's ever tried doing startup work in those spaces, they're incredibly high barriers to entry. And so businesses that are in those spaces, the hospital systems, the educational systems, all of that, they've really got to learn to adapt and to start collaborating more with the entrepreneurial community, folks that are making all of these crazy advancements. I think a good example is just seeing how quickly AI was able to impact education and kind of just blow public education's mind a little bit of like, what the heck do we do? That didn't need to go that way. It could have been really eased in. It's not like this technology just poofed into existence one day. It's been a decade of development. It didn't need to just wipe and really create that massive of a shift. But I think from a public policy perspective and from just these kind of older social institutions, it's learning how to be more adaptive and responsive quicker, to really then be able to impact daily life in a better way. And for us in Orlando, I really, like I said, appreciate the efforts in that so far. We've got the OEP and their digital twin. We've got Lake Nona, which is trying to do a little of everything. The Orange County Public Schools has been pretty adaptive as far as like VR and AR. They work with the Orlando Science Center a lot in that space. So I think our community is in that mindset again, because we've been doing this not for a couple of years, but for decades. But it's going to take a lot more to get it to that place.
Yep.
Hey,
Steve, question?
Kyle, I love your thinking, and I'm like 100% with you. I have this little inspiration came to me. It sort of reminds me of like real estate development, where you bring artists into a warehouse district. You have them set up studio shops, and so basically the artists are the ones who are using the technology to expose it to the public. All of a sudden, the public goes, "Oh, there's murals. It looks really cool. There's art openings. Now there's more expensive cars parked there. Let's go and frequent that neighborhood. Oh, let's buy a condo over there. That's great." So in a similar way, socialization is going to happen through relentless use. If our artists aren't using these AR and VR to activate spaces, activate information, then how's the public going to hear about it? If it's only held behind the privacy wall of defense and military and big business, how do those innovations leak down to the ground floor? I mean, so if and this is I'm just speculating, if we have a digital twin of Orlando, is it in Roblox for kids to play with? Is like how much are you meeting people where they are? Is there in every Orlando park where there is a piece of art, is there a QR code attached to it that actually has some metadata about the artist, that installation, give people the opportunity to explore this new rich context of the world, paint the world with data, give people access to it, and then you'll be able to do some A/B testing to find out, well, which experiences are the ones that really move the needle for people, that are worth shoring up with more investment or with plugins from NVIDIA or whatever, right? So I feel like there's some sort of hardcore like proletariat, like just release it to the artists and let them, but in a sense, the tools, I speak from this like very light on code, very heavy on art standpoint. The tools don't meet the artistic community where they are right now. And so even if you go into the metaverse suite of tools, it's a bugger to get the filters working. It's, so there's the onus is on us as technology developers to develop simplistic UIs and UX that actually meet people where they are cognitively, right? Because we're now asking a Roblox generation, okay, well, what are you going to be more socialized toward? It's sort of like having a drone pilot use a joystick from a Sony or an Xbox. Well, that's what they're socialized towards. That's what you're naturalized towards. That's the wiring that imprinted on them. How do we lean into that to get more and more adoption? Eventually, everyone will pull out their camera phone and immediately an AI avatar will pop up, and it will be a metaverse example, and it will have access to Wiki, and it will be this thing. But how are we going to get there? Well, right now we're at a point where like everybody's still a Luddite. They're taking a picture of a QR code to look at a menu, not having a virtual waiter appear who has like a social semantic AI behind it. It's so, you know, the future is ours, really.
Well, and
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Sheena, please.
to that point, that was really the genesis of where the community wanted to invest in events like Synapse and now Global Meta Center Week. This convergence of artists and technicians and investors and educators and private industry is what we have to continue to foster here. The more that we mash these creatives together with other industries, the more that we're able to adopt innovation, expose, accelerate, and see the changes that we need to. But until people show up, until people say, yes, I need this event in my community. Yes, I'm willing to support it financially. And yes, I'm going to tell everyone I know that they need to do the same. We'll still continue to be a second layer city supporting these industries. It's the having spent years trying to promote these industries and deliver action items on what the community said they want, it was really difficult to see people then not show up, not sponsor things, not do it, because we know that these are the moments that need to be created, the convergence of creatives and business and industry. But I really think it's back on us as a community to be advocates and evangelists to make sure that everyone, not only the technicians, understand why it's important to show up to these events and be part of these conversations.
Yeah, I think we use the word community a lot, and it almost to the point where it's like losing its value a little bit. But I think to your point, Stephen, of like the artist side and bringing folks together, I have this like personal nugget for myself that I believe the technology will advance and society will resist, and that like the technology, like you mentioned, like technology is there and it's gonna happen. Like it's just gonna happen. I don't, folks like Sean, they're just gonna build stuff, and that's just a natural habit. But the harder problems, I think, are in society's resistance to actually adopting this technology, right? So as like an entrepreneur, if you really want to solve a hard problem, just put the code down and go try to get 100 people to wear VR headsets. Like that is the hardest problem. And get them to do that in a room and paint a picture together. Like if you could figure that out, now you've got $1 billion business. And so if you think about that perspective, and to Sheena's point, think about how we can adapt our community and get the community ready, get people involved, just get it into their hands every single day. Now you're really building momentum towards a proper future.
On to this point a little bit more, someone had asked the question, how do we get the metaverse into lives of every person? Well, we're not going to. It's not going to happen. It's kind of like when the internet first came out. Like think of your grandparents. Like, were they using the internet every day? No. Eventually, maybe some of them started emailing, and that's what it's going to be like. What's likely going to happen is we'll have a network effect. Someone will create a platform like a Facebook, but it's more of a quote unquote metaverse, and it's going to slowly expand over time, over the course of a decade, all of a sudden there will be billions of people inside of it. But to me, it's not really a metaverse when it's just one platform. And this is where I think people don't see the bigger picture. It's that when all of the things that we've talked about today and a whole lot of other things that I can't even think of every website that's ever been built, is now represented in 3D. And all of those things are interconnected. That's when we have our metaverse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think to that point, there's a real opportunity when you look at the industries that exist in the Orlando region. Our tourism industry can play a major part in the adoption of this. People tend to suspend reality when they arrive in Orlando naturally, right? These millions of visitors. And then you combine that next to one of the largest defense ecosystems in the United States. We have an audience to use it. We just have to put it in front of them. And when you can leverage and cross between defense and themed entertainment to advanced technology so that they can use it, we're really going to start to see more businesses then adopted into different industries and start to have different platforms to where we can get to that mass adoption. But when we look at tourism, it's not just the individual. There's business owners and executives that travel here and really have the opportunity to accelerate it. And if we don't use it, we don't leverage that platform that we have in the Orlando region, welcoming all of these people to our community every day, that's our loss.
Awesome. Well, I know we're we're kind of out of time here. But this has been awesome, and thank you everyone for joining, and then thank you to Sean and to Kyle and to Matt and to Sheena for joining and to talking about everything that you're doing. So we'll post this after again, Meta Center Global Weeks next week. Hope to see everybody there. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Guys.